Picture this, a city is on total lockdown. Presidential planes are sitting on the tarmac. A historic peace deal between the US and Iran is literally hours away. And then, just like that, it all falls apart. So let's dive into this diplomatic mystery, the story of a negotiation that was over before it even began. You could feel the optimism. I mean, it was palpable. The White House, led by President Trump, was projecting absolute confidence. There was this genuine belief in the air that a major breakthrough wasn't just, possible, but that it was right around the corner. And just like that, hoofs, the hope just evaporated. The delegations never even sat down in the same room. The press corps, who were all ready to go, were sent home. So you have to ask the big question, was this just a simple, unfortunate failure of diplomacy, or was it a calculated power play? To figure that out, we're going to break this whole thing down. We'll start with the scene on the ground in Islamabad. Then we'll dissect the totally competing stories from Washington and Tehran. We'll look at all the external pressures, the blockades, the brokers, and see how this whole drama played out on social media, before asking, okay, what happens next in this really unfinished game? So let's start in Islamabad, Pakistan. You have to understand, this wasn't just another diplomatic get-together. The city itself was physically transformed, bracing for a moment that they hoped would put Pakistan right at the center of global peacemaking. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this preparation. We're talking massive security zones, shutting down huge parts of the city. Entire luxury hotels were completely cleared out for the delegations. And get this, American C-17 military planes, the big ones, had already touched down. Presidential limos were waiting. They were ready for a massive, world-changing event. And then, nothing. Crickets. It's like throwing the biggest party of the year and the guests of honor just ghost you at the very last second. For Pakistan, the host nation, which had staked so much of its international reputation on this, it was just a moment of crushing disappointment, and frankly, a huge diplomatic embarrassment. Okay, so what on earth went wrong? To even begin to understand that, we need to look at the official story coming out of the United States. Why did the American delegation never even get on the plane? That final day was just a whirlwind of uncertainty. In Washington, you had reporters staged at the Air Force Base, ready to go all day long. Back at the White House, tense, last-minute meetings were happening. Then, at 4:15 p.m. Eastern, the entire dynamic just gets flipped on its head with a single social media post. And this right here, this is the core of the American explanation. President Trump's message was really clear. This isn't on us. The problem, he said, was that Iran's government was a mess. Too divided, too disorganized to even figure out what they wanted and put a real proposal on the table. So the bottom line from the US perspective is this. You just can't negotiate with someone who doesn't even know what they want. Washington painted this picture of a chaotic, fractured Iranian regime, and in doing so, they placed all of the blame for the collapse squarely on Tehran's shoulders. But of course, that is only one side of the story. From Tehran, the view was, well, entirely different. For them, the issue wasn't their own internal division. It was a deep, profound lack of trust in what the Americans were actually up to. This quote from an Iranian official who was actually in the room for some of the earlier talks, it just gets right to the heart of their argument. Iran claimed it was being bombarded with contradictory signals from Washington, which made any kind of serious diplomatic process feel, well, impossible. And they had a list of reasons why. They said, while you're talking about peace, your military is still attacking our ships at sea. Your leaders are making these wild public threats, and that crushing economic blockade, it never let up for a second. So they were basically asking, how can we trust your words when your actions are saying something completely different? And this right here illustrates the deadlock perfectly. Washington saw a weak, fractured opponent. Tehran saw a deceptive, untrustworthy one. It's like they were watching two completely different movies. And with a gap in perception that massive, the common ground you need for a real negotiation, it just wasn't there. Now, of course, this didn't happen in a vacuum, so let's zoom out a little and look at the other powerful forces at play here. The role of the mediator, Pakistan, and the intense economic pressure cooker of these dueling blockades. So for any high-stakes deal to work, you usually need what's called an honest broker. Think of it like a neutral referee that both sides trust to call the game fairly. In Pakistan, they desperately wanted to be that referee for the US and Iran. But here's the problem. Iran lost faith. They started to feel that Pakistan wasn't really neutral, that they were tilting the field to help the Americans. And look, when you don't trust the referee, it's pretty hard to stay in the game. This was just another major crack in the foundation of these talks. And then there was the economic warfare happening in the background. Iran was essentially holding a critical global shipping lane hostage, but the US hit back with an incredibly powerful countermove, a full blockade on Iranian ports. It was this high-stakes game of chicken, and it was inflicting massive economic pain on both sides, making any real path to peace that much harder. Okay, this brings us to a really unique modern part of this standoff, the way diplomacy and its collapse was all performed in public. This wasn't just about what was happening in closed-door meetings. This was a battle for the story, and it was fought online for everyone to see. A lot of analysts pointed out that the president's post, the one announcing the collapse, was unusually measured for him. Many saw it as a pretty clever tactical move, a kind of face-saving device designed to control the narrative, put the blame on Iran, and buy his administration more time without looking weak. So how did Iran fire back? Not with some formal, stuffy statement. No, they hit back with satire. They released this video that basically mocked President Trump, showing him getting all impatient and then eventually caving to their demands. It was a clear, bold attempt to project strength and just ridicule the American position on the world stage. So, where does all this leave us? The talks fell apart, but we didn't get all-out war again. What we have instead is this incredibly fragile, deeply unstable situation. It's an unfinished game with dangerously high stakes. And this is the key takeaway. Yeah, we have an open-ended ceasefire, which sounds nice, but both sides are still engaging in what the military calls kinetic activity. That's a fancy way of saying they're still seizing ships and shooting at each other in the Gulf. This is not a stable peace. It's a combustible situation that could blow up at any moment. Which leaves us with this final, really big question. In this new era where negotiations are live tweeted and the fighting continues even while you're talking about a ceasefire, what does the path to a real, lasting peace even look like anymore? It's a challenge that doesn't just define this conflict, but maybe the whole future of international diplomacy.